Hello everyone, hope you're all having a nice day, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at Cramorant, a brand new upcoming budget deck out of the set Lost Origin. So for those of you who don't know, Lost Origin is a set that's coming out in September, and it will combine cards from Lost Abyss and Dark Phantasma. So what is Cramorant? So Cramorant is an easy to set up budget deck. Yeah, we'll mess that up, we'll go with it. Cramorant is an easy to set up budget deck thanks to Comfrey, and has a devastating late game with Sableye and Zard. So we'll take a look at what Sableye does in a second. But just to recap what Zard does, it's the Radiant Charizard from the Pokemon Go set. So the one that can do like 250 damage in the late game for every, costs one less colorless, one less colorless than attack cost for each price card the opponent's taken. So we are playing Sableye and Zard in some of these lists, so we do need to bear that in mind. So what does Cramorant actually do? It has the ability Lost Supply that says if you have 4 or more cards in your Lost Zone, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack cost. So that's essentially like the main theme with Cramorant. So it's 110 HP water type, but our water typing won't be too relevant, unfortunately, because as we'll see with Conniving Spit, it does 110 damage, but it isn't affected by weakness. So Cramorant, unfortunately, doesn't really work so well as a water-type coverage in a Lost Zone box. It works more as like a free attack while you commit your energies to a more awkward attack cost in the form of Giratina. So Lost Supply says if you have 4 more cards in your Lost Zone, ignore all energy. So you can just do Conniving Spit for free, basically. And all these lists are kind of like built around this strategy, trying to do 110 damage. So very quickly, Sableye is 8 HP Psychic type basic, so you can just find it with Level Ball quite easily. And it has the attack Lost Mine that's absolutely bonkers that says you may use this attack only if you have 10 or more cards in Lost Zone. If you do, put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in play in any way you like. So it's 12 damage counters, so for those of you not that familiar or need reminding, it's 120 damage essentially, but you can just spread it however you want. So it will go through Manaphy, which is kind of bonkers. It won't go through the Power Cell. I forget what they call it, but like the big Power Cell card. It won't go through that, sadly, but it will go through most other things. And the late game, obviously, if you've been doing like chip damage with your Cramorants, doing like 110 or 140 with a Choice Belt, then having this as like a late game sweeper move is very powerful. And we will see with like Comfrey, is that Comfrey lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and you get to choose one of them and put the other one in the Lost Zone. So it's very feasible to, in the late game, have like 10 cards in Lost Zone, and then you can make use of Lost Mine. So a couple of other cards very quickly you have to go over. Mirage Gate says you may only play this card only if you have 7 or more cards in your Lost Zone. It says search your deck for up to 2 basic energy of different types and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. And you may be thinking, well, how does this relate to Cramorant? Because, well, Cramorant doesn't actually need energy once we have all 7 cards in Lost Zone. Well, all 4 for Cramorant. But Mirage Gate is actually played in 1 or 2 of these lists because this is actually a good way of essentially playing an attacker in a deck where you actually want to accelerate a lot of energies, such as Giratina. I don't have any Giratina lists today with me, but I do have an amazing rare one with like Raikou and Rayquaza, I want to say. So they have an awkward energy attack cost, basically, so Mirage Gate will let you power them up. And then Colorus says, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 3 of them in your hand, and the remaining cards in Lost Zone. So Colorus is just a very easy, quick way of putting cards in Lost Zone every single turn. It is pretty weak in that you're only drawing 3, but at least you get to choose those 3 out of the 5. So I think this is like, in a Lost Zone deck, is definitely a very good supporter. It also just builds towards a Lost Mine attack as well, because, Comfrey is only putting 1 a turn. But if we use Comfrey's several, maybe every single turn for several turns in a row, then we use Colossus Experiment, we should definitely get up to, Mirage Gate and Cramorant territory pretty quickly. So the very first list is an interesting one. It's actually playing the Galerion Articuno from PokeGo. So Galerion Articuno, for those of you who don't remember, because let's be real here, I don't think anyone plays those legendary birds from the set, but it actually says your water-type Pokemon do an extra 10 damage. So this is really interesting to me. I think what it's in here for is just to make the Choice Belt combo of hitting, more than 110 against a V-Star that bit much better. So we think 110 plus 30 from the Choice Belt is 140. That's 280 doubled, so that is KOing V-Stars in a 2-hit KO scenario. But there will be turns where we need to do a wee bit more damage than that. There's a couple of VMAXs that are still seeing play. And also there's a couple of matchups where you would naturally want to do a little bit more damage without Choice Belt, or maybe even we whiff Choice Belt or something. So we kind of want to be able to, hit the damage. Scenarios I can think of is actually against the Regigigas deck, where they'll have like 120 to 150 HP, I believe, and then the Miltank deck. So Miltank could give you a little bit of trouble, but if you play the old switcheroo on them and then get some Articuno into play, you could easily knock out a Miltank even with a Big Charm. So I think that's kind of why Galerion Articuno isn't here. I would say just play one of the Sableye, but I guess the reason they're not actually playing Sableye is they would rather commit their energy slots to capture energy. So that is a cool thing. If you're totally building around Cramorant, you don't need to run any energy, which is really cool. This list is playing for capture just so you can attach to a Comfrey, I think turn 1, for example, or wait, this is genius. Because if you open with Cramorant or Comfrey, you can hopefully try and capture energy to one or the other, and then just pay the retreat cost and then use the other one, whichever one you want to use, basically. So that's pretty cool. Also playing a Manaphy, because you kind of have to really in this day and age with Radiant Greninja running around and Spatial Swell being able to charge up in one turn. 1 Pyukumuku, and then quite heavy Pokemon Search, 4 Quick Ball, 2 Level Ball, 1 Hisuian Great Ball. Then we're also playing 4 Pokegear, 4 Trekking Shoes, so just trying to hunt down this Colress Experiment really quickly. 1 Ordinary Rod, just because we do need to get Cramorants back at some point. 1 Palpad, which I really like. I think Palpad's a super underrated card right now, and seeing it, in more and more lists is really cool. 2, I'm just going to call it Lost Hoover, because let's be real here, this card over here does look like a Lost Hoover. I don't know what it's actually called, but it has the effect. In order to play this card, you must put a card from your hand into a Lost Zone. If you do, then you get to discard a Stadium card in play or a Pokemon Tool card. I do believe it can be attached to either player's Pokemon. This also explains why we actually play 3 Stadiums and 2 Air Balloon and 3 Choice Belt. So we are playing, a decent amount of tools and Stadiums of our own that we can discard. It's also worth noting you have to put them into a Lost Zone. So essentially, although the Mystic Mirage Gate Hoover itself goes into the discard pile, you do end up putting 2 cards in a Lost Zone. So if you use one of these, literally just 1 copy, and then a Comfrey over 2 turns, you can use Cramorant by turn 2. So pretty good. 4 Scoop of Net, just so you can probably pick up Articuno or get them out the active, or if you open with Pyukumuku, which is really cool. 3 Escape Rope, because you won't be able to track down boss a lot and you just need to get out the active spot. 3 Choice Belts we mentioned earlier. 2 Air Balloon to switch around. 4 of a Colress Experiment, 2 Boss, 2 Nessa, 3 Poke Stop thingy, and then 4 Capture Energy. Overall, I think this is a really cool list. Obviously, you can't purchase the Lost Origin cards from this deck, but if you're looking to test this out right now, most of the list is actually in Standard currently, so that's pretty cool. Only 4, 8, 12, okay, maybe a few. 14 cards are from Lost Origin. So overall, not too bad. I think this is a really cool list. Probably not super competitive, but pretty quirky. So moving on is definitely the more spiciest. I think this is the most spicy of the 3, basically. This is an amazing rare box, and the whole focus of this deck is we're going to try and use the amazing rares in the late game, or use Ditto to copy the amazing rares, which is really funny. I love the idea of Ditto copying Rayquaza. I think it's really cute. But either way, so this is a list playing Mirage Gate. So that's kind of why this deck can get away with playing 5 different types of basic energy. It's really cool. But basically, Rayquaza says you can discard any number of basic energy attached to your Pokemon, and it does 80 damage for each one. Rayquaza might actually be from himself exclusively. I actually don't remember the translation of Rayquaza. It's quite bad. I don't think it should matter too much, because if you're discarding them from Pokemon in play that you would accelerate with Mirage Gate anyway, so nothing too crazy there. Raikou does 120 and then 120 to a bench, so with the Choice Belt attached, Raikou would actually 1-8 KO Palkia, which is really scary for them. Of course, they do play Manaphy, and a lot of decks do play Manaphy right now. Surprised the list doesn't actually have a Manaphy of its own. But the 120 and then the 120 spread is still pretty lethal if they, with Manaphy or whatever, so pretty cool in that department. But 2 Ditto, 1 Sableye, 4 Comfrey, 1 Primate Wisdom, and then 1 Luminion, because this deck only plays 8 supporters, and none of them are Researcher Marnie, which is really sketch, but we do play the 4 calls experiment and then 2 Raihan, just so we can start, like, I guess you can attack with the amazing rares throughout most of the game, or maybe you just use Raihan in the late game. I'm not sure. It's a very strange list to take apart and dissect, because to me, this is a deck that obviously doesn't have a very set game plan. Like, obviously, you're trying to attack with Cramorant as soon as, and the amazing rares as soon as. But then you have, like, Ditto, who can copy Cramorant if you really need to. Oh, wait, no, you can't. Well, never mind. You can't copy Cramorant with Ditto, never mind. But you can copy Sableye, and you can copy Rayquaza and Raikou. But I wouldn't recommend this to someone who is just trying to get a feel for a Lost in deck. I would suggest playing the list before if they want to do that, and then maybe like lean into this as a more experimental approach. But still think it's really cool and definitely a cool way to try out the amazing rares. So going to the last list is probably my favorite one of the whole bunch. And this is one that is pretty wild. It does play the Radiant Zard and the Sableye, and it also features a new Drapion V. So what this Drapion V does is that for 4 colors energy, it does 190 damage and then 60 to itself, or one of your bench Pokemon, I think. So that sounds really bad, like how are you actually powering that up without Mirage Gate, but it has an ability Wild Style. It says, for each of your opponent's rapid, single, or fusion strike Pokemon in play, that is correct, rapid, single, or fusion, Drapion's attacks cost 1 colors less. So it essentially gives you an out to Mew, heavy Sobble and Talion builds. It gives you a free attacker against them, which is really cool. Single strike, you know, they're obviously just going to flood their board with single strike Pokemon all the time, so Drapion's a good attacker versus them. It is a 2-price liability, we have to bear that in mind when looking at Drapion. But the 190 damage is just free damage for single energy. It's kind of bonkers, honestly. And it does combo quite nicely with some Cramorant maps. So obviously as well with Sableye, just setting up like one Akira's on V-Stars effectively over several turns. So it is pretty cool. I love like the inclusion of Radiant Zard as well, because Sableye is obviously spreading 12 damage counters. So the 250 from Zard that wouldn't usually hit, you know, like V-Star numbers, can hit V-Star numbers because you can just like ping them for 3 damage counters and whoops, they're dead. Like you are playing 4 choice spell and 2 switching cards, so you can like, you know, increase the damage and move around a wee bit. And yeah, it's a really cool list overall. Not too much to say about it. 2 mana fee is definitely interesting. I think this person just like has had like Radiant Greninja put the Fear of God in them or something, and that's why they're playing 2 mana fee. Wee bit excessive, personally. I don't think I would go that far. If I would change 1 mana fee for anything, I would probably change it for a what I'd change it for? It's a good question, actually. It's a hard choice, honestly, because like I would say a stadium of some choice, but they are playing 4 Old Cemetery, which is weird in its own right. So they obviously think the 20 damage from Old Cemetery is worth it in some matchups. It's interesting. Very interesting list. I don't know. Honestly, it's very interesting. I think it's really cool, but I think this one is the most competitive out of all 3. This one's the most like wacky and out there, and then this one's like the most budget friendly, easy to play. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Which list would you like to try out? And hopefully I'll see you on the next video.